first one in Brussels, so we're bringing a Polish brand to the policy-making capital of Europe. How have you enjoyed this edition so far?
Well, I have to say I'm a loyal participant in CYBERSEC. I was at the first edition in Krakow, and I always appreciated the combination of enthusiasm, professionalism, and dynamism in these conferences, and I think this brand is now brought back in Brussels in this very compact, efficient format of a one-day conference, but covering the important streams, you know, policy, defense, and technology industry. So it's a very good event.
Let me focus on this diversity for a while, and let's try and look at it from layman's perspective, people who know little about cybersecurity in general. Now, from the perspective of someone like that, they probably think, okay, you get a conference, 200, 800, 1,000 people, all of them representing very different walks of life. Some of them are from military backgrounds, some from industry, some are programmers, some are business industry representatives. And the thing that may come to their mind is they probably talk about everything and nothing, and it might be actually very difficult for those people to extract the value factor, to understand what the value is from bringing together 1,000 people from interrelated walks of life. What's the value to you?
Well, you bring the essential question. So, what is it all about? If one would, revert to the theory of international relations or geostrategy, it makes us all get out of the prisoner's dilemma. Without this kind of interaction, bringing the knowledge, bringing the experience from so many different backgrounds, we would be all prisoners of that experience or that background. We can only overcome the challenges that issues like cybersecurity or the impact of new technologies upon our security bring through this kind of interaction. So it is essential, and if it's well organized, it can bring a huge value added, and this is the case of this conference.
And when you think about countries such as Ukraine, for instance, now, where the cybersecurity landscape is really incredibly complex, on the one side you hear of weaponized cyber warfare, at the same time you hear about everything else you hear in other countries, such as attempts to manipulate the electoral process, to impact the public opinion through massive campaigns, trolling, different mechanisms that cyber criminals use for affecting public opinion. So without this diversity, even with goodwill from Western powers, Western agencies, it would actually be quite impossible to approach directly the Ukrainian government, for instance, and tell them how the EU could be of assistance, of help, of support.
Well, the truth is that there are a number of mechanisms of engagement with Ukraine, and I can testify from the NATO experience. Ukraine is a valued partner of NATO, and in cybersecurity and defense, we had run a number of projects and programs, either under the Science of Peace and Security program, starting from training, establishing cyber labs, up to running a trust fund for cyber defense for Ukraine that was established by a number of allied nations, 8 allied nations. In this case, it was under the leadership of Romania, but with contribution from a number of allies and the international staff who tried to focus the resources in those areas that were most needed. I know that there are also a number of project avenues on the EU side. What is important, what such conferences like the one of today bring is an opportunity to amplify such exchanges, to come with new ideas, to take stock of what was done, learn lessons, and do more. I always say in the field of cybersecurity, complacency cannot be accepted. We should try to narrow the gap between what attackers are doing and the quality of and capability of defenders to really mitigate and respond. So it's in these formats that we can get smarter.
You mentioned narrowing the gap. We all know it's part of the urban legend, urban myth that hackers are the ones to be agile, highly skilled at evolving their strategies and techniques, more and more stealthy, and also very creative about penetrating different, whether it's state, military or commercial systems for their benefits. Would you say that on the other side of the spectrum, big multinational institutions have learned their lessons and are now much more responsive in the way they react to the challenges? Have they become more agile over the years?
Absolutely. There has been a lot of learning and a lot of adaptation. If you would ask me if it's enough, I would say no. There has to be much more intense focus and many more resources that should be focused to this, from intellectual to financial, technological resources and so on, in order to, as I said, to close the gap. Ideally, we would have perfect cyber stability if we would have a deterrence mechanism so that hackers don't hack anymore, attackers don't attack anymore. But we never lived in an ideal world, so the point is to try to narrow this gap and be as close as closing it. And for this, there's a need for much more effort. There's a need for more understanding on behalf of elites, business elites and political elites. There's a need to close this technology policy gap, and there's a need to invest more from skills to capabilities to innovation, so that we can bring all the new stuff, the cyber analytics, artificial intelligence on the side of the defenders in order to be able to offset the advantage, the agility of the attackers.
Ambassador, I'm going to ask you a Robin Hood kind of a question. Let me explain. Extremely talented professionals, no matter what industry they work for, the most creative people on this planet, usually have a reason why they become so good at what it is they do. Once they have a reason, they develop something that you can call an ethos, a mythology, a legend around why they do things in life, what motivates them, what drives them. Some of them become hackers, artists even, when it comes to technology, in the sense that they're so skilled. My question is, some of those big, clunky institutions, do you think they have the skill, the potential, the power to develop positive stories, positive mythologies, storytelling that will attract eventually the best talents from the hacking world?
I think there is a strong focus to generate this storyline, the attraction. Many government or intergovernmental institutions offer attractive position for people to learn, understand better, to accomplish themselves professionally. In some cases, when it comes to law enforcement, in many of our states, we saw stories where black hat hackers became white hat hackers, and they really transformed themselves, used their skills on the positive side.
And it's not FBI blackmail we're talking about.
I definitely, I'm not speaking about this thing. And I have to say, there are situations in a number of countries where many of the talented people come to put their skills, talent to the benefit of the defenders. And I'm glad that through particular mechanisms like exercises or so-called challenges that are organized in the US, is the famous Hack the Pentagon, where talented people are challenged to try to find ways to enter into the some systems that, for example, the institution of the Defense Department puts together for this particular challenge. NATO does exercises, European Union does exercises, organizations, non-governmental organizations have such events where they try to test the talent of those who can become the best defenders, because they bring the talent, as I said, on the side of the defense rather than offense.